We were just having a debate, / they were having a debate, in the break. They were saying, when you heard Keir Starmer basically saying that he's not going to raise taxes for working people, and then he goes on to list all that, do you pay attention to the details? So do you hear him when he's going on about, I won't raise this tax or this tax or this tax? Or do you literally just hear, right, we're not going to raise taxes, and that is the message that you receive? I've got to point out to you all as well that when he was actually pressed, Keir Starmer, what do you mean by working people? Because that's what he was saying, I'm not going to raise taxes for working people. It then transpires that what he actually means was anyone that hasn't got any savings. So you can be a working person but have savings, and then you would, presumably, we shall see in October, be having some element of tax rises. So tell me what you think to it. Look, we've kind of talked about this. I'll play you a clip in a second about populism. And in fact, you know what? Let me play it for you now, because Keir Starmer, when he was talking about these riots, he was speaking a lot about snake oil salesmen. Listen.
But these riots didn't happen in a vacuum. They exposed the state of our country, revealed a deeply unhealthy society, the cracks in our foundations laid bare, weakened by a decade of division and decline, infected by a spiral of populism which fed off cycles of failure of the last government. Every time they faced a difficult problem, they failed to be honest. They offered the snake oil of populism.
What's your reaction? Well, I can hear your reaction, but tell everyone at home, what's your reaction to that, Matt Goodwin?
I think to be honest, it's how much of the left views social problems that they don't want to talk about. It's all the result of misinformation, populism, far-right politics. They can't countenance the notion that actually people might have good reasons for feeling deeply anxious about the fact that we no longer have secure borders and therefore are no longer a serious country. You can't be a serious country without strong borders. And we no longer have control over who's coming in and who's going out of the country. Now, Keir Starmer can say, well, the snake oil of populism and all the division. I mean, this was the guy that was telling people, remember, after the Brexit referendum, your voice actually isn't legitimate. I'm going to demand that you vote again. I mean, this was the guy who was basically saying representative democracy only really matters when the people agree with what I think about these issues. I just don't buy it, I'm afraid. What he should have said today is, look, all the polling companies are saying immigration is the #1 issue facing the country. We need to fix the borders. Both left and right have got this wrong. This is what I'm going to do. We need to dramatically lower net migration. We've got a low-wage economy. It's not working. We're spending $5 to $7 billion a year on our asylum system. This isn't fair on the British taxpayer. They deserve more. That's what he should have said, and he should have then delivered results instead of saying, all these guys over here are populists and far-right, and all these guys over here who agree with me, well, they're fine. They're Democrats. We're OK with them. I thought it was a very divisive speech, Michelle.
Sure.
When he talks about snake oil, what he means is people saying things like, instead of having a serious discussion about this issue, saying things like, you can't be a serious country without strong borders.
You can't.
Now, so the United States of America, 40 million people across its border in the last few decades. Are you telling me that United States of America is not a strong border?
I agree with Elon Musk, actually, when he said last week, America is not a serious country. A country that doesn't secure its own borders is not a serious country.
So what if America's not a serious country, and Germany, which in the middle of the EU doesn't have borders in the same way?
Well, thankfully, Germany is changing its mind over the crazy policy of mass immigration. We can see that. We can also see in Canada today, by the way, where even Justin Trudeau has said this is a disaster. The only people who haven't realised this is the Labour Party.
But is America a serious country? Is Germany a serious country? Are any of these countries serious countries? The truth is not that you can't be a serious country without a strong border. That's just snake oil. The truth is that these are very complex, difficult issues that are causing huge policy problems for all different kinds of countries in all parts of the world. And rather than meaningless, deliberately angry, inflammatory stuff like you can't be a serious country with that, why don't we have a sensible discussion about how difficult the
How would you
is?
solve the small boats crisis? Because I know what I'd do.
Well, what would you do?
I'd leave the ECHR, I'd reform the Human Rights Act. What would you do?
So we were in the ECHR all the time that we didn't have a big small boats problem. So how does that explain the small boats problem being caused by the ECHR?
It's not caused by the ECHR, but the ECHR is preventing us from controlling our own borders and also deporting foreign nationals.
Why didn't it prevent us from controlling our own borders for the previous 4 decades when we didn't have small boats and we didn't have these levels of illegal
because we had a global refugee crisis.
Or maybe we've had more than a few global refugee crises over the years. How come under the last Labour government we were able to be returning 50,000 people a year to war-torn countries all over the world? But now, this Labour government, for some reason, is going to find that impossible because of the ECHR, even though the ECHR was in place at the time.
You've not answered the question, how would you solve the small boats crisis? I've given you what I think is the answer that is outside of the Westminster window, let's call it that. How would you solve it? Because so far, the only thing Yvette Cooper has said is that she's going to remove 14,000 people from the country. That's all she said. And maybe increase some police officers to smash the gangs, but we all know that's like whack-a-mole. You get rid of one and another one pops up. I'm asking you, because I think the British people deserve an answer, a serious answer. How would Labour regain control over Britain's borders?
So let me give you 2 answers, and again, illustrate the difference in approach here. Your answer, I'd leave the ECHR and that would solve the problem. My previous remarks were aimed at explaining that that's just snake oil. It's just not. It's just not true. It's an easy answer. Let me make the second point.
It's just an answer you don't like. It's not snake oil.
Let me make the no. It's snake oil.
It's just an answer you don't agree with.
Let me make my second point, which is the difference of approach. And bear in mind, I'm not a part of the Labour government. I'm not part of it. I'm just. I'm Labour and I support them, but I'm observing it. I don't know what the answer is, and I think they are going to find it very difficult. And I agree with you that the things that they've talked about so far, they don't fill me with huge confidence that unless they come up with more stuff significantly better and soon, they are going to find it hard to smash the gangs. But the difference is that what I'm saying is this is a very difficult problem to which I don't think there is an easy answer. And I think we should have a grown-up conversation about it, not just give everybody an easy answer and say, why don't we just do that?
Because I hear this all the time. Everyone goes, oh, leave the ECHR and it's all sorted. And let's just assume, right? I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the ins and outs, but let's just assume that your strategy works. So we've left the ECHR and now this kind of magical situation, now you can sort out the small boats. What is the downside of leaving the ECHR? Because the ECHR must give us things. So by coming out of it, what do we lose?
Well, people like Siôn and the Labour MPs, Keir Starmer and others, primarily would argue that we'll lose international standing in the world, that being a member of an international European court is a source of soft power and legitimacy, and they would argue that we need to work together with other states to solve this issue. What I would argue is that human rights laws have evolved to such a point that they are now routinely used by people who should not be in our country, who are often committing crimes. One thing Keir Starmer does not mention, by the way, when he's talking about the prison issue and the lack of space in prison, is we have 10,000 foreign criminals, it's estimated, in Britain's prisons. 10,000. They shouldn't be in Britain. They're foreign criminals, foreign national criminals. Why can't we deport them? Because routinely they appeal to the ECHR, to rights within the European Convention. They're backed up by human rights lawyers and others who allow them to stay in the country. I personally don't think that is respectful to the British people and the British taxpayer. Now, when I say these things, that's an opinion that I would argue is based in an interpretation of evidence. When Siôn says things like, well, that's snake oil salesmanship, I don't think that's helpful. In the same way that I don't think it's helpful that Keir Starmer says, well, anybody who disagrees with me is a populist. Because in that, if that's true, 80% of the people in this country who want to lower migration, who want to regain control of the borders, are all populists. Well, I just don't think that's on.
But he didn't say anybody who disagrees with me is a populist. He didn't say that. He didn't say anything like that. What he was saying was that in his view, the absolutely disgraceful, utterly indefensible scenes that we saw in recent weeks was partly stoked and encouraged by political populists who should know better.
It would be so much easier for Starmer if he could just say there are criminals, people who broke the law, but there are also lots of people who want to fix the border, who want to live in a country that makes them feel safe. And he's not once said that. Since
and
the
it would be
protests,
wrong to do that. It would be wrong to put those two side by side.
No,
he should be having. He could
draw a line between them. He could say, we don't agree with violence, we don't agree with breaking the law. He could have said it this morning. But by the way, I acknowledge this is a really big issue. People want to talk about it. My social media, like Michelle's and GBNews, is full of people saying, why can't Keir Starmer just say, I get it. You want control over your own borders. You don't want to live in towns that feel unsafe. You don't want machete-wielding gangs. I get it. We want to deal with these issues. Why can't he just come out and say that?
He has said that kind of thing loads and loads and loads
I've not
of
heard
times.
it since the riots.
Oh, come on. Are you honestly telling me that you think this government is actually accepting that there are many people out there who have a genuine concern, a legitimate concern, I would call it? If you're in, for example, Hartlepool, and you hear the story that a so-called asylum seeker has murdered that 70-year-old guy, and then you have, I don't know, a hotel with these people from all of these different war zones at the end of your road, do you feel that it's okay to be somewhat apprehensive, scared or whatever about who these people are at the end of your road, who quite frankly no one even really knows who they are anyway?
I think that there's a real kind of a wish to paint these Labour people it's quite easy with Keir Starmer because he's Sir Keir Starmer, he's a KC, he's been a very successful in his life, even though he came from, as we've heard 100 times, working class origins. It's easy to paint them, or try and paint them, as some kind of out of touch middle class elite.
I'm asking a simple question.
I'm answering you now.
Acknowledgement that many people in this country have legitimate concerns based on things like I've just described to you, the 70-year-old fella who gets murdered by a so-called asylum seeker. That leaves a legitimate concern in people. Do you think that has been acknowledged by the Labour Party?
Yes, absolutely, I do.
How and where and by whom?
So those people that you're talking about, those communities that you're talking about, up and down Britain, right across Britain, Wales, Scotland, England, north, south, all over Britain, working class communities that are under pressure and that are angry.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, just 7 weeks ago in a general election, voted Labour.
You're not answering my question.
I am answering your question.
Are the Labour
the reason they voted Labour,
legitimate concerns of safety that people have, not based on...
Of course, I answered straight away.
Actual behaviour that's happening.
Yes, and that's why people voted for them. All of them.
20% of the eligible electorate voted for Labour. Let's be sensible about this. Who is acknowledging those people's concerns?
Labour is acknowledging those people's concerns. All the time. The point I'm making...
Give me one example. if everyone's doing it all the time, just give me one example then.
I genuinely... Look, I think it's a... I think it's a daft question. I mean...
Do you know, but you see, this is the issue that I have with so many people who commentate on current affairs. There is such a disconnection, such a refusal to acknowledge that there are people in this country who are terrified about the fact that you've just moved in 100 random men from some random war zone at the end of their road. No one knows who these people are.
But there's not a disconnection.
In the press about people being murdered in their own community by these people. And they are afraid, they don't want this. And you're saying...
There's not a disconnection.
It's a daft question.
The daft thing is to suggest that the question is the way that it assumes that the Labour Party and Labour MPs are not in touch with these people and their feelings.
Asking you,
of course they are.
Acknowledge this. You're telling me all of them acknowledge it all the time. I've asked for one example of it then, if they're all doing it all the time. You can't give me one. And then you say, well, it's a daft question. I'll leave you at home to decide if it's a daft question.